the night Porter Haynes got stopped. He had exactly $47 in his wallet, a half-eaten granola bar in the cup holder, and a sealed metal briefcase in the back seat that the officer would later describe, in his official report, as suspicious in nature. That report would be revised 3 times before the end of the week. It was a Thursday in late October, somewhere on the stretch of Route 9 that cuts through Hargrove County, Georgia, the kind of road that exists mostly as a corridor between places people actually want to be. Porter had been driving for 6 hours. He had a job interview the next morning at a logistics firm in Savannah, and he had given himself extra time, because that was the kind of person he was. Precise, unhurried, a man who believed that showing up late was a form of disrespect. He had borrowed his cousin's truck for the trip, a 2019 Ram 1500. Clean black exterior, no dents. He had cleaned it himself before leaving. The lights came on behind him at 11:14 p.m. Porter checked his speed. He was doing 53 in a 55. He looked in the rearview mirror, saw the blue and red strobing, and felt the thing that every black man in America knows. That particular contraction of the chest, that quiet, involuntary bracing. He pulled over immediately, turned off the engine, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, waited. The officer who approached was Deputy Slade, and he walked the way some men walk when they are certain nobody is going to question them. Shoulders back, gait deliberate, one hand resting near his belt. He was 31 years old. He had been with the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department for 6 years. He had received in those 6 years 11 commendations and 4 internal complaints. The complaints had each been dismissed. He shone his flashlight into the cab before he had even reached the door. "License and registration," he said. Not a greeting, not even a full sentence, just the demand delivered to the glass. Porter rolled down the window. He kept his hands visible. He said, "Good evening, officer. License is in my wallet in my back pocket. Registration is in the glove box. May I reach for them?" Slade looked at him the way people look at things they've already decided about. "Go ahead." Porter retrieved both, handed them over calmly. Slade looked at the license for a long time, longer than necessary. He looked at the registration. He looked at Porter. He walked around to the back of the truck, examining the plates, though they were clearly in order, clearly matching the registration he now held in his hand. He came back to the window. "Whose vehicle is this?" "My cousin's," Porter said. "His name is on the registration, Dwayne Haynes. I borrowed it for a trip to Savannah." "You don't live in Savannah?" "No, sir. I live in Macon. I have an interview tomorrow morning." Slade looked at the back seat. The briefcase was there, latched shut, resting on top of a duffel bag. His eyes stopped moving when they found it. "What's in the case?" Porter kept his voice even. "Work materials. Work materials," Slade repeated, with the intonation of a man who has heard a great many lies and believes he is currently hearing one. "What kind of work? I'm an engineer." "Structural. The case has documents and equipment I use on site." Slade asked him to step out of the vehicle. Porter did not ask why. He had been through enough of these moments to know that asking why, in that particular tone, in that particular county, at 11:14 p.m. on a Thursday, was not a productive use of his energy. He stepped out. He stood on the gravel shoulder with the highway noise surrounding him and the flashlight cutting across his face. "We received a tip," Slade said, "that a vehicle matching this description was involved in a narcotics transport." Porter looked at him. "A tip. That's correct. Can you tell me what the nature of the tip was, or who provided it?" Slade's jaw tightened. "That information is part of an ongoing investigation." "I see," Porter said. "Am I being detained, officer?" The deputy looked at him with something that was not quite anger, and not quite contempt, but lived in the same neighborhood as both. "I'm asking you to cooperate with a lawful search, I understand. I'd like to know if I'm being detained or if I'm free to go." "You're being detained," Slade said, and said it like it cost him something to have to answer at all. He called for backup. While they waited, Slade walked Porter to the cruiser. He did not cuff him. He put him in the back seat and closed the door, and Porter sat there and looked through the scratched plexiglass at his cousin's truck, while a second deputy, a younger man named Tillman, who kept glancing at Porter with what looked like unease, arrived 8 minutes later. Slade began with the cab. He went through the glove box. He went through the center console. He found the granola bar, a pair of work gloves, a manual for the truck, and a phone charger. He put each item on the hood with the particular ceremoniousness of a man who is performing a role he has rehearsed many times. Then he went to the duffel bag in the back seat. Porter watched from the cruiser. The duffel bag had 3 changes of clothes, a toiletry kit, and a pair of dress shoes still in their box. Slade removed each item and placed it on the asphalt. He squeezed the toiletry kit. He checked the shoes inside the box. He found nothing, and there was a moment, brief, almost imperceptible, where something shifted in his posture. But he didn't stop. Men like Slade don't stop because they haven't found anything. They stop because they've found something, or because someone is watching who matters. He turned to the briefcase. Porter saw it happen through the scratched plexiglass. He saw Slade reach for the case and try the latches. They were locked. He saw him turn back to the cruiser, and he saw the look on Slade's face, and he recognized it. It was the look of a man who has already decided what something is, and who believes the only remaining formality is proving himself right. Slade knocked on the cruiser window. Tillman opened the door. "The case is locked," Slade said. "I need the combination." Porter looked at him for a moment. "You want me to open it?" "I'm asking for the combination." "I understand what you're asking," Porter said. His voice was very quiet. "May I ask whether you have a warrant?" The pause that followed was 3 seconds long. It felt longer. "The canine alerted on the vehicle," Slade said. "When?" Porter asked. "I didn't see a canine unit arrive." "Before you were out of the cab." Porter said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "I'll open the case." He walked back to the truck with both deputies behind him. He crouched down, turned the combination dial with the kind of steadiness that comes not from the absence of fear, but from the long practice of not letting fear show, and he lifted the lid. Slade looked into the case. What he saw was not drugs. What he saw was not paraphernalia of any kind. What he saw was a laminated photo ID clipped to the inside of the lid. Federal government issue, Department of Defense seal. Porter Haynes's photograph in the top left corner. Beside it, in a clear sleeve, a badge. And below that, nested in foam cutouts designed to hold them precisely, were the tools of a man who did not work in a warehouse or a kitchen, or any of the places Slade had silently assigned him. Bore gauges, a digital inclinometer, a sealed report folder with a government header visible at the top, but it was the ID and the badge that Slade kept looking at. Tillman, standing just behind and to the left, made a sound that was not quite a word. Porter did not look at either of them. He did not make any expression of satisfaction or vindication or anger. He had learned over the years that such expressions in such moments served no purpose he cared about. He just stood there and let them look. "You work for the federal government," Slade said, and it came out less like a question and more like a man recalibrating something he had been so certain of. "I'm a structural engineer," Porter said. "I'm contracted through the DoD on infrastructure integrity assessments. The ID is my site access clearance. I have an interview tomorrow for a project in Savannah. That's the folder on the right. It has preliminary schematics I prepared for the project lead." Slade looked up from the case. The expression on his face was one Porter had seen before, though usually on people who had just lost an argument they'd been very confident about winning. It was the look of a man who has performed a very public action and now cannot unperform it. "Why didn't you say that when I asked what was in the case?" Slade asked. Porter looked at him steadily. "I told you it was work materials. You didn't ask what kind of work. And I was under the impression, based on the way this stop was going, that it wouldn't have mattered." There was nothing to say to that, so Slade said nothing. What happened next happened slowly, which is often how accountability happens. Not in a single dramatic moment, but in accumulation, in paperwork, in reports that get reviewed by people whose names you don't know. Tillman filed his own account of the stop. It differed from Slade's in several specifics, including the canine alert, which Tillman's report noted he had not personally witnessed, and which, when reviewed, was found to have no corresponding K9 unit dispatch record for that location and time. The Hargrove County Sheriff's Department's own computer-aided dispatch log showed no K9 unit in the area of Route 9 between 11 p.m. and midnight on that Thursday. Porter filed a complaint the following Monday from Savannah, where he had arrived at 6 a.m. and slept for 2 hours in his car before showering at a gym, and where he had walked into the interview in the same suit he had packed in that duffel bag, and where he had, by Friday, been offered the position. He filed the complaint calmly, with documentation. The dashcam footage from his own dashcam, which he had installed 6 months earlier, and which he never mentioned to Slade, the GPS log of his route, the call record showing no calls made or received that evening, and a written account he had composed in the Savannah hotel room the night after the stop, while the memory was still exact. The dashcam footage was 9 minutes and 40 seconds long. It showed the stop from the moment Slade's lights appeared in the frame. It showed Porter's hands on the wheel. It showed the entire search. It showed Slade's face when he opened the briefcase. The footage was reviewed by 3 people before it was reviewed by a 4th, who was the department's legal counsel. Slade was placed on administrative leave pending review 12 days after the stop. The review took 6 weeks. During those 6 weeks, 2 other complaints were located in Slade's file, complaints that had previously been dismissed, which were reopened in light of the new documentation. One was from a man who had been stopped on the same stretch of Route 9 2 years earlier. That man's account described a strikingly similar pattern: a stop with no clear traffic violation, a search premised on a claimed canine alert, the removal of personal belongings onto the road shoulder, and the discovery of nothing. That man had not had a dashcam. He had not worked for the federal government. His complaint had been dismissed within a week of filing, with a note in the file that read, "Insufficient evidence to support allegation." Porter didn't follow the case obsessively. He had a job to do. He drove back and forth between Macon and Savannah, and he worked, and he called his cousin to return the truck, and his cousin asked him how the trip went, and Porter said, "Interesting," because that was the most accurate word, and because he had learned that the full version of certain stories requires a particular kind of energy that he preferred to spend elsewhere. But he did learn, eventually, what happened. People told him. His attorney told him. The local paper in Hargrove County told him, in a brief article on page 7 that he read on his phone during a lunch break. Slade was terminated. The K9 alert fabrication was the central finding. Manufacturing probable cause is not a gray area, legally or professionally, and the absence of any dispatch record made it very difficult to argue otherwise. The department issued a statement that contained the word regrettable twice, and the phrase does not reflect our values once. Porter did not read the statement carefully. He had heard its structure before. What he thought about, more than the termination, was the 9 minutes and 40 seconds of footage. Not because of what it showed Slade doing. He had expected that, had lived inside some version of it before, but because of what it showed him doing. His hands at 10 and 2, his voice without tremor. The way he had crouched at the case and opened it with the same calm, deliberate precision with which he did everything, because that was who he was before the stop and who he would be after it, regardless of what any officer decided to make of him on a dark road in Hargrove County at 11:14 p.m. on a Thursday in October. He kept a copy of the footage, not as evidence. The legal matter was resolved. He kept it because it was, in some precise and important way, a portrait of himself, not the self he wanted to perform for anyone, not the self he constructed for interviews or project meetings or the careful professional world he had worked his way into. Just himself, under pressure, being exactly who he actually was. That seemed worth keeping. There are people who will look at a situation like this and find the wrong lesson. They will say that Porter was treated well in the end because he had a government badge, and they will conclude that the badge was the point, that credentials were what saved him, that the system worked because the system eventually recognized his value. That is not the lesson. The lesson is not about what was in the briefcase. The lesson is about the 9 minutes before anyone looked inside it. The lesson is a deputy who, in those 9 minutes, had already made every decision he was going to make, based on everything except what was actually in front of him. The lesson is the man in the back of the cruiser, hands in his lap, not performing innocence because he had nothing to perform, just waiting for a system he did not fully trust to, nevertheless go through its motions in his direction. Porter Haynes didn't become worthy of decent treatment when Slade opened that case. He was worthy of it before he pulled over. He was worthy of it before he turned on his engine that morning. He has always been worthy of it. The question was never about him. It was always about the deputy who couldn't see past what he had already decided, and in the end, the camera saw what he couldn't, and the record showed what he tried to hide, and the truth, which had been sitting there the entire time, patient and unhurried, exactly like the man on the side of Route 9, eventually caught up. It always does.